Introducing CA Abdul Rafiq, who is a fellow member of ICAI. He passed the CA final exam in 1985 and CISA in June 1995 and DISA of ICAI 2008. He passed various global certification exams such as Certified Information System Auditor, Certified in Governance of Enterprise IT, Certified Fraud Examiner, Certified Internal Auditor, etc. Mr. Rafiq is also popular technology evangelist for CAs and believes in empowering CAs by harnessing power of technology. He has special expertise in the areas of IT assurance and data analytics. He has experience of 35 years in various roles such as CFO, CIO, IT implementer, IT consultant, IT auditor, data analyst, and CAT IS audit trainer. CA Rafiq has also presented on the topics of COVID, IT audit, and CATs at international conferences, workshop of ICASA and its chapters across the world in more than 14 countries. He has conducted many training programs using data analytics and BI for assurance and fraud investigator for various professional organizations in India and abroad. Rafiq was a practicing chartered accountant specialization in information technology audit for more than 20 years. Since last 10 years, he is the managing director of Windsor Infotech Limited, with specializing in developing data analytics solution for auditors, fraud investigators, and management. With this brief introduction, I welcome you, sir.
Thank you. Namaste. Good morning. And welcome to this webinar. I'm really excited and thrilled to be making a presentation. In fact, I remember long back we initiated this technology summit seminar for the Bangalore branch, and most of these used to be well attended. They used to be physical, and this is the first time we are doing a virtual technology summit. So thank you very much for attending. So I look forward to a great learning experience. Let me share my screen and we'll get started. Thanks, Suresh. It was a very good, insightful keynote address, which laid the foundation for this presentation. Now, if you see my opening slide, so we have this one-day seminar on global technology. If you look at technology, technology in India has been global. There was a time about 3 decades back when there was a gap of about 2 decades between the technology used in foreign countries and in India. But now you find the technology is instant. In fact, many of the technologies are initiated and much more popular in India than in any other place. For example, if you take WhatsApp, WhatsApp became such a brand only because of its usage in India. And TikTok also became such a brand because of usage in India. Now you find because of the rapid proliferation of internet and bandwidth, we find technology is being extensively used. Now, what is important is where are we using technology? Now, if you look at the 4 topics of today, we have the first topic, which I'm going to cover, scope and opportunities in data analytics. This is the most relevant topic for CAs because this is practically useful right now. Now, if you look at machine learning, artificial intelligence, this is something which they can look at in terms of the future. They have to invest in the future and learn. If you look at information technology audit, this is a new avenue which they can explore. Some of the CAs are already doing that. And then if you look at blockchain, that's also future-oriented technology. Now, in the case of data analytics has got a unique prerogative because you can not only use this in the future, but more important, you can use it currently in your profession. The most important resource for a CA, if you ask, you would say it's knowledge, or you can say skill set. But most important resource for any human being, including a CA and a professional as a CA, is time. The significant differentiator or contribution from technology is that it's able to save time, and most important, it's also able to add value to the deliverables of a CA. That's what we need to focus on. And there long back, there was a candidate who went for an interview, and when the interviewer was going through the biodata, That candidate said, "Sir, I have got 20 years experience." The interviewer perused the biodata and then said, "Sorry, gentlemen, I'd like to make a small correction. It's not 20 years experience, it's 1 year experience repeated 20 times." As a CA, especially if you're a CA in practice, I think it's important we need to do a little introspection and check what is our experience. Is it 1 year experience repeated 20 times, 30 times, or are we increasing our knowledge? And when you're increasing our knowledge, what is the area in which we are increasing our knowledge and skills? Is it in the area of compliances and assurance, or is it also in the newer areas of technology? Technology is a skill where you cannot learn by backseat. Now, if you see this particular presentation, the slide, you find there is a movement all around. Now, this shows bits of data moving around. And this is actual practical simulation of the world. As we are speaking now, there are billions and trillions of bits of data which is being moved all around the world. And this is what is enabling us to live in this world. If you look at commerce, you look at banking, if you look at any economy which is flourishing, you find there is more and more the movement of this digital bits of information in the ether. Now, with this basic introduction, let's get started and move on. I think there's a brief introduction of myself, which has been already done. Let's go further. I'd like to do a little introspection. As a CA, we have got unique skill sets. I think it's important for us to know what makes us unique. What is the value we can deliver? There are thousands of CAs in Bangalore, in Karnataka, throughout India. Now, what is the unique capabilities which I have? I think this is what is important. Now, further, you should also be clear about what is the mission you want to accomplish in your life. What is your purpose? Is it just to earn livelihood or to create livelihoods? Now, I think it's important that with the type of knowledge and skill sets we have, we focus on creating livelihoods rather than just earning our livelihoods. So if you look at the topic here, first, empowering CA with the DA. So we want to see how data analytics can empower CAs. Before I get into the detail of the presentation, I thought I'll show you an interesting story. If you remember, long back. Now, if you're able to see my screen, and if you can read it, you'll find this is the contents from the Bhagavad Gita. Now, there are totally 700 verses. And there are 699 verses, including the header. Now, I want you to just look at this particular verse where Krishna has asked Arjuna to stop the chariot between the armies so that he can see who are the ones who are ready to do battle with Arjuna. And Krishna takes the chariot of Arjuna right in the center of the battlefield. And after seeing all the relatives, all the people who are there ready to fight with him, what does Krishna say? Arjuna say? Arjuna says, after speaking like this to Krishna, the mighty Arjuna said to Krishna, "I shall not fight," and become silent. And this is where Krishna starts his Upadesha, or he starts the Gita rendering advice to Arjuna. So he says, "O King Lord Krishna, as a smiling spoke this word to the despondent Arjuna in the midst of the two armies." And then Krishna started the sermon of the Bhagavad Gita. Now, if you see this analogy here, now there are listeners. Who are the listeners? Now, Krishna is a listener. Arjuna is a listener. In addition to that, there's one Sanjaya who is sitting in the palace of the king Dhritarashtra. He has been granted Divya Drishti, and he's also listening to this conversation and relaying it to Dhritarashtra. So it means Dhritarashtra is also a listener. Now, if you look at all these listeners, they listen to this particular story. They listen to the Bhagavad Gita given by Krishna. Each of them was one type of a listener. Now, if you look at Dhritarashtra, what did he listen? What is the perspective with which he listened? He was only interested in his son's winning in the battlefield. He was not interested in all the gyan or the knowledge or the wisdom given by Krishna. So nothing went into his head. If you look at Sanjaya, Sanjaya was a passive listener, which means he was only listening to convey it to Dhritarashtra. He was not interested in implementing, he was only doing his job. Now, if you look at Arjuna, Arjuna was listening not only to understand, but also to implement. Now, in this webinar age, most of us are doing webinars. We also do a lot of multitasking. And it could be possible you have kept this particular screen on and you're working on something else. Now, it's important that when you are into an important subject, you become an active listener, not a passive listener or an ignorant listener. With this background, I wanted to ask, if you have been personally present, I would ask, what type of a listener are you? I would also ask you to switch off the mobiles. I can't do that now in a virtual seminar. What I'll do is interesting. I'm going to come back to the sequel of the story at the end. Okay, like we say at the end, what are the type of the listeners? What are the impact of the Gita on the listeners? I'll come back to this in the end. Now let's go on to the presentation. Okay, there are some people who have not. Let me just see. Okay, let's get started. Now I was talking about empowering CAs with DA. So it's important as CAs, we learn technology from a practical perspective so that we can implement it as required. Technology should be a slave, not a master. We should know how to use technology as required. There are 4 questions they say a CA should ask pertaining to technology. Now, if you see here, technology changes faster and faster, and you know that it goes faster and faster. How will the emerging technologies impact you as an individual? How will you embrace innovation? One of the important aspects of technology is that there is a lot of innovation happening constantly. How do you innovate? That's also another thing you need to look at. Next, will you adopt and change, or will you be left behind? These are some questions for introspection. Do you know how to navigate the information superhighway to increase your productivity? The most important use of technology is you can enhance your productivity and the value of your time. It's also not only yours, you also need to look at your staff. Are you and your staff using the right toolkits to enhance efficiency? Are your assignments done with the right level of assurance? Can you add value to your clients who wish to leverage technology? Quite often I used to ask, if there is any issue with compliance, the first person the client will think of is the chartered accountant. But the same thing pertaining to information technology, if the client is facing a challenge in implementing information technology, now you find that chartered accountant doesn't come into his purview at all. So that's the type of mind space we have created as of now. It's important that we need to change this and be recognized as thought leaders, not only in income tax, but also in information technology. The power of technology is not in what it can deliver, but what you can make it deliver. And this is where the power of data analytics comes into the picture. You have a flood of data, but we are starving for insights or information. This is where you can use data analytics to access, analyze, and evaluate digital information. Now, the question you need to ask is, are you equipped to explore these new avenues in the area of data analytics? Just like there is a GST which came in, and then Institute launched, let's say, a 1-week course, 1-month course, so many courses are launched, and CA spends hundreds of hours in updating on GST. Similarly, I think we need to spend a little time on understanding practical aspects of technology for implementation in our offices, and also so that we can be advised to our clients. Now, the last point which I wanted to think about is, are our current core competencies or skills relevant for the digital age? Now, if you see here, there's a bird which is sitting on the branch of a tree. Now, if you remember, a bird sitting on the branch of a tree is not worried about the strength of the branch or the wind which is blowing. because it is confident of its wings, the strength of its wings, and it knows that it can fly away whenever it wants. It can go to any branch. Similarly, as a chartered accountant, we have got some core competencies, and these are our wings. Now, using that, we can fly and get into any new area. We need to focus our strengths on our core area and see how we can supplement it with the power of technology. Now, they say there are 3 useful sets, and these are relevant even for chartered accountant. This is called as the mindset, the skill set, and the tool set. The data analytics requires all three sets. One, you need to have a mindset in terms of knowing how to harness the power of technology. You should know how to develop skills so that you can implement it. You should also know what are the right type of tools which you can use. If you look at every professional, is known by the tools he carries. For example, a tailor has got a particular type of tools, a plumber has got a particular type of tools, a doctor has got a particular type of tools, an architect has got a particular type of tools. Similarly, I want to ask you, as a chartered accountant, what are the type of tools we carry? Long back, it was a pencil and the eraser and a calculator. Now we know it's much more than that. Now, this tool sets, the range of tool sets we know how to learn and deploy has to keep on increasing, and we need to keep on updating. That's why they say our future depends not on the government, which will keep on regulating or increasing the amount or the limit for tax audit. Our future depends on what we do today using our core competencies. Now let's get to the first topic of the agenda, data analytics. What are the key questions? Now I'm going to discuss both the concepts and the practice. Initially, I'm going to go quickly through the concepts so that we can spend more time on the practical aspects. My objective is, at the end of this presentation, you should be able to sit in your office, do research, and start looking at what are the technology which you can additionally deploy in your office, especially in the area of data analytics. Now let's get going and look at what are the 6 key questions. Now, these are the 6 key questions we are going to answer in the course of this presentation. First question, who are the users of data analytics? This also talks about the scope. If you're an auditor, you can use data analytics to provide better assurance with greater assurance. You can find answers to the audit questions. Is management reporting the accurate sales, are payables complete, etc. You trust, but you verify the details, which means you know what is it which you want, what is that you want to verify, and then based on use of data analytics, you can confirm the veracity and the completeness of the data. As a fraud investigator, data analytics can be used for identifying the possibilities of fraud and also identify the evidence which is required and gather evidence in the form of audit trials. As management, data analytics, which is also called as BI or business intelligence, can be used for decision making. And this is the ultimate objective of data analytics in business, that you want to take better decisions, and these decisions should be based on facts, and this should be based on data. In fact, Narayan Murthy is famous for saying, bring me the data, because based on the data only he would take the decisions. And this data could be pertaining to any area of operation. So now if you look at scope and application of data analytics, I said you can use it for assurance, you can use it for compliance, you can use it for fraud investigation. It can also be used for providing value advisory services to management. What is data analytics all about? It's nothing but the application of the knowledge, the skills, and the tools and techniques for performing relevant tests as per the scope and objectives of the assignment. The scope and objectives of the assignment doesn't change. What changes is the tools. The destination doesn't change. What changes is the mode of transport you use for reaching the destination. What is the definition of data analytics? They say it's the science of examining raw data with the purpose of drawing conclusions about that particular information. For example, you have the interest computation which has been done, or you have the discount which has been provided by the company to its debtors based on the credit policy. Now you want to verify whether the interest is correctly computed. Now, the software might have computed the interest, but you're not sure whether the software is manipulated, whether done correctly, whether all the possibilities have been taken care of. In that case, what I do is I access the raw data pertaining to the transaction in terms of when the transaction takes place, what is the rate of interest, what is the period, and based on this, I recompute and verify and validate with the existing computations to identify exceptions and irregularities. The same thing would apply to discount. The company has got a discount policy based on, let's say, value and the volume of transactions. They provide a particular discount. Now that discount would have been already applied through the software. I can verify and validate through the software by independent computation and confirm whether the discount has been correctly applied and whether there are any exceptions. For example, the company has got a payment policy, let's say a procurement policy, based on which they make payment to the creditors on a particular period, and they procure at a particular pricing. I can access the data, the purchase transactions, the masters of the purchasers, vendors, and then based on that, I can verify whether all the purchase transactions have been done as per the particular policy. Suppose the purchase policy also says who was authorized to authorize the transactions and what is the limit. I can also verify this. I'll also show you practical demos a little later. Now, one interesting question which comes about data analytics, is it an art or a science? Now, it's a science in terms of how data analytics does the computation through the coding, through the software. It's an art because you will decide how you're going to apply it to the required situation. There are 4 types of analytics. One is called the descriptive analytics, where you look at the past and look at what happened. There's a diagnostic analytics, where you look at why did it happen. We find out the root cause analysis. We have predictive analytics. We look at what will happen next. We have prescriptive analytics. We look at what is the action to be taken. Now, if you look at the first two, the descriptive and the diagnostic, these are looking back into the past. And the second one, predictive and prescriptive, are looking forward into the future. Now, in this presentation, most of my focus would be on descriptive and diagnostic. And as CAs, in most of the cases, when we are doing compliance or assurance related services, our focus would be on the data or the transactions which have already happened and analyze these particular transactions. And this is where descriptive analytics comes into the picture. And if there are certain exceptions and irregularities, we will also do a diagnostic analysis to check why did it happen. Now, this gives you a brief explanation of each of this type of analytics and also gives examples of the type of tools which can be used. Now, if you look at the examples, let's say if you look at descriptive analytics, we'll look at the month-wise state sales during 2020. Now, let's say what is the percentage of sales during each of the quarters. In a diagnostic analytics, we also looked at what is the reason for the result we got. What is the result? What is the reason or the causes for the outcome? For example, the sales has come down. What are the causes for that? In the case of predictive analytics, we look at the future and say what will happen if I increase my, let's say, discount by 5%, or I decrease my price by, let's say, 5%. In prescriptive analytics, we also look at how can you do a combo packaging of the particular products so that we can increase, and what will be the increase because of this combo pricing of products. When to use data analytics? Now, if you see, we can look at the hindsight in terms of what has happened. We can look at insight in terms of where is the problem, or what are the actions needed, why is this happening, or we can look at foresight. Now, if you look at the discussion so far, we have earlier, we saw descriptive analytics, diagnostic analytics, predictive and prescriptive. Now, if you see, foresight is where we are looking into the future. When to use data analytics? Now, you see, when you want to establish certain facts and issues, for example, as an auditor, we are supposed to verify the true and fairness of the accounts, the true and completeness of the accounts, depending on the type of the assignment. So we want to establish facts. For example, the sales which has been shown, is it correct and complete? Whether the TDS has been correctly computed, whether the GST has been correctly computed, whether the TDS which has been computed has been paid on time. So we would like to look at compliances in terms of the deadlines and whether these have been done. So it means we are looking at facts. We're also looking at issues. For example, let's say the company has got a policy, whether this policy has been correctly applied and whether there are any issues in compliance. For example, let's say that the cash payment about 20,000 rupees should not be made because there will be penalty, whether this has been done. We can also explore hunches and ideas. For example, I have a hunch, looking at the type of transaction has happened, that in some of the cases, the discount has been given extra, or some of the creditors have been favored by making purchases at higher rates. I can explore that by actually asking questions to the data. We can also draw inference insight from the data. We can also validate and confirm the hindsight. And based on all this, we can provide findings and recommendations. Where can we use data analytics? Now, this is a very important aspect, that wherever data is available in a digital format, which means there is electronic information that is to be audited or that is to be reviewed, this is a potential candidate for using data analytics. Let me tell you an interesting assignment we did for one of the public sector companies. They had fraud which took place in this particular organization, and they had appointed an internal team who went into all the records pertaining to the purchases where the fraud was suspected, and based on a review of all the transactions, let's say for last 3 years, they spent about 3 months, and based on that, they came to the quantum of the fraud. They wanted to do an independent analysis by an auditor. They called us and we discussed with them. The first question we asked them was, do you have this data in a digital format? They said, no, we want you to verify what the internal audit team has done to verify and confirm whether they have done correctly and completely. I said, your internal audit 12-member team took 3 months to come to this conclusion. We cannot afford to invest so much of time and effort, and that also would be waste. If the data is available digitally, probably we can do it in less than 3 weeks. And we found the data was available digitally, and we said, we'll take an independent route. We'll identify the fraud based on the digital data by using data analytics, and we'll be able to confirm to you what is the type of the fraud. And surprisingly, when we gave the findings to them, they said, I think we have found many more items of fraud, which even the internal audit had not identified through their physical verification. So that is the potential of data analytics. Within 2 weeks, we are able to actually go through the complete data of all the transactions and identify all the exceptions of the payments which are made to unauthorized vendors and also duplicate payments. We are able to identify and quantify the amount of fraud, which the physical team took more than 3 months to do. And this is what is the power of the data analytics. There are international publications, and if you look at the international organization, IAASB, they have formed a data analytics working group, which also highlights the significance and importance which is being given to data analytics at the global level. So they're exploring the growing use of technology in the audit with a focus on data analytics. Now, you can use technology for various facets in a CA's office. For example, fundamentally, you can use it for, let's say, office management. For example, you got office work, you got clients, and for them, you're providing various types of services. You want to ensure that you're able to monitor the execution of the work. For that, you have a software. You also want to monitor the communication with the client. You have different type of software. You want to monitor the work being done in a particular way, which means you want to document the process of audit or compliances. There is separate software for that. Now you want to do the analytics, which means you want to analyze the data wherever there is required. And that's where data analytics could be useful. Quite often we tend to get confused and we think we are using one type of software which can take care of all the needs. There is no one ready-made software which can take care of all the requirements of software. So you have to identify separate specific segments of software which could be used for specific purposes as required. For example, you want to look at documentation, you look at audit documentation software. If you're looking at analytics, you use data analytics software. If you look at communication and office management, there is a separate type of software. Now, based on this international publication, they looked at the life cycle of audit, right from the audit plan to audit closure, and they found data analytics could be used extensively in the area of substantive testing, which means you've got a set of transactions, which is the data which is available digitally. And now you can audit these particular transactions using the tools which are available through data analytics. Now, Excel is also an excellent tool. I'll also show you that you can go beyond Excel to data analytics. Now, if you look at data analytics and the impact on the quality of the audit, they say data analytics enhances the quality of audit in a very, very significant way. So you can audit a higher volume of data and you can provide greater assurance with better assurance when you use data analytics. Now, data analytics could be used in the case of risk assessment. For example, you want to look at all the transactions, and based on the transactions, you want to identify the high risk transactions, or you want to pick up the high risk areas. You can do that. You want to perform analytical procedures. For example, let's say you want to look at the policy compliances, whether the TDs has been correctly complied, whether the software configuration has been properly set as per the requirement. You can also look at substantive testing, which is the detailed testing of the transactions, whether the computations is correctly done, if the discount policy is there, whether discount is correctly computed as per the procurement policy. You can look at that. You can also look at the test of controls. For example, you got the authorization policy, whether the controls have been properly implemented as per the authorized policy of the management. So data analytics can be used in all these cases. For example, in one interesting case, when we were doing an IT audit, they had about 300 users, and this ERP software had about 500 functions. Now they want us to do a verification of the authorization policy to check whether the users have been created with the right access. Now manually, it was difficult to actually verify for each of the users what the right of access granted within the software. We're able to export this particular data pertaining to the access policy in Excel and do the analysis based on the department to which the user belonged, and based on the type of right, whether the user had only access to read the document, or only add the document, or modify the document, or edit or delete the document. We're able to verify whether this particular policy, access policy, has been correctly granted. So all this 300 to 500, we're able to do it in a few days, whereas manually it would have taken us probably a few months. Now there is a paradigm shift, they say, when you use data analytics, and especially in the audit. So if you look at the traditional area of audit, the focus is on the field work, which means you're looking at how we can execute the document, verify the documentation, focus on vouching and various other areas. We used to do sampling based on specific areas. It was based on hindsight. Okay, last time we did the audit, there are some specific areas, or when I review some documentation, I find certain specific issues. So it could be based on the past which has happened. It could also be based on searching for certain specific things and look at what could go wrong. And the risk was more based on the control orientation. The focus was on control and the design. Whereas when you look at the analytics driven, the focus is on issues that matter. For example, you look at the, let's say, procurement policy. I can look at the complete procurement policy, document what are the policies pertaining to the company, and based on that, identify what are the controls I have. And that based on that, I can do the data analytics. For example, let's say based on the procurement policy, I want to verify whether all the procurement has been done from the authorized vendors only. I can do that. For example, I have a procurement policy which says purchases are made from authorized vendors for certain specific authorized products and at certain authorized prices, and at the purchase at particular volumes. When the stock is at a particular level, I can verify all these using data analytics. And this can be done on 100% of the population. It helps in broader coverage and provide sharper focus, because I can look at what is most important and do a 100% audit. I mean, this is where we can get insights in terms of whether the compliance being done and whether any issues we can identify. And based on that, we should also be able to give them appropriate recommendations. Now, how do you perform data analytics? Now, let's get to the crux of the matter. Finally, we're all interested in how do we perform data analytics. Data analytics, they say, is all about asking the intelligent questions to digital data by using the right tools and techniques based on your domain knowledge and skills. Now, if you look at the skills which are required for analytics, now this is where I wanted to closely look at this and analyze what are the type of skills you have and where are their gaps. Now, if you look at finance and accountancy, this is a no-brainer. Most of the CAs have knowledge in this area. Business understanding, we know we are very good at getting a business understanding regardless of the type of the business is being done. Data literacy, this is where we need to spend time, especially pertaining to the digital data. Next, most important in the case of data analytics is data extraction. How do we extract the required data regardless of the software, regardless of the database platform which is being used? For example, they might be using, let's say, Tally. Tally has its own database, internal database. So we cannot extract the data directly from Tally, but Tally has got various reporting features. It also has got various exporting features through which I can export the master data and the transaction data. So in case of Tally, I know how to extract the data. I'll also show you a practical demo a little later before the end of the presentation. Now, let's say the company is using an ERP software. In that case, an ERP software may have, let's say, 500 tables. Each of the tables may have about 50 fields. I may not be an expert to understand each of the tables and each of the fields, but any ERP software, for example, SAP, has got an option for exporting the required data. For example, if I'm auditing, let's say, accounts receivable, I can actually extract all the data pertaining to the transactions of sales. Similarly, if I'm auditing, let's say, accounts payable, I can extract all the data pertaining to the purchases. If I'm auditing, let's say, fixed assets, I can extract all the data pertaining to the fixed assets, whether it's the transaction data or the master data, which means I should know, most important, how to extract the data from the specific software, or in some cases, it's a customized software. It could also be possible that I can directly access the database itself and access the data directly from the tables. We should also know the application software. What is the type of application software? How does it work? How to analyze this? And most important for a CA is supposed to be a creative problem solver. We should have problem solving and critical thinking. Fortunately or unfortunately, what has happened is most of problem solving and critical thinking abilities of a CA is applied in the case of compliances, in terms of how can I actually ensure compliances, or how can I benefit from the compliances. We should also look at how we can apply this problem solving and critical thinking abilities in the domain of business application. How can I help the business to do better? We also need to know about visualization. How can we use graphics or images to be able to visualize and present this particular data? And we should also know how the data can be used to tell stories. For example, I want to show the pattern of sales for the last 3 years. I can present the story in terms of how it has moved based on various seasons. Now, if you look at any technology, if you want to do data analytics, we need to understand the business processes. We need to understand the regulatory requirements. We need to understand the organized structure in terms of who has got authorization to what are their authorization powers. We also need to know the technology deployed which is used. And based on that, I can test the risks and controls. But if you look at the current situation, all this has got embedded inside technologies. The business processes, the compliances, the organized structure, what are the technology can do, everything is embedded inside technology. For example, if you want to look at the discount policy, the TDS compliance, the GST compliance, all these are embedded inside the software. So I should know how to use the software or how to access and analyze the data so that I can verify and validate whether the compliance have been taken care of. Let's look at a systematic approach. If you want to use data analytics, we set the assignment objectives, we set the test objectives, what is that I'm going to test, and then based on that, we obtain the relevant data in a digital format. We identify the specific tools and techniques you want to apply, and then based on that, we perform the tests on the data, and then we evaluate the findings to infer insights, and then we review the findings, and based on that business context, and we provide the report and the recommendations. This is a generic approach, whether you're doing a internal audit, a statutory audit, a compliance audit, or any type of an audit. Now, if you look at financial statement assertions, now this gives you an example. How do we look at the various aspects? These are the 7 financial statement assertions. We can validate and verify the data for all these aspects, whether it's pertaining to completeness, accuracy, validity, authorization, etc. I'll come to some practical examples a little later in my presentation. Now, if you look at the specific audit tests we want to perform, we set the test objectives. What is that I want to test? For example, I want to check whether the TDS has been deducted correctly and whether remitted correctly. So I set the test objectives. Based on that, I collect all the data pertaining to the TDS from that particular software, identify the test to perform. So I know if the TDS has been deducted, what the rate it has to be deducted, whether it's been correctly done. Similarly, when the amount has to be remitted, I know what is the due date within which it has to be remitted. I can check with the actual date of remittance and check whether this have been remitted on time. And then based on that, I use specific tools and techniques to perform the test, evaluate the result, and based on that, we come to the findings and we finalize the report. Why do we need to use data analytics? Now, if you see this quote, I do not believe you can do today's job with yesterday's methods and be his business tomorrow. I think this is self-explanatory. We need to adopt the latest data analytics tools. Now, in terms of using technology, I found most of the CAs are quite good in using WhatsApp. Now you find even the clients started using WhatsApp extensively, and many of the information, most of the information, forget about email or any other thing, everything is done through WhatsApp. But the problem is WhatsApp has its own limitation. Okay, so you should know, how to use WhatsApp. That is one type of this one information, which means you're using for communication. You should also use it for execution of the assignments. Why should CA should learn data analytics? They said data analytics is a must-have capability for the audit function and is widely expected to become a big part of the future. Now, why data analytics is required? Now, this gives you some examples of where data analytics could be used. You want to identify duplicate payments, you want to identify overpayments, you want to identify unauthorized credit. Depending on the scope of the audit, the scope of application of data analytics is limitless. Why use data analytics audit? They said the most expensive thing in the world is trust. As auditors, we are supposed to be trusted custodians to verify and validate this particular data. So we provide assurance and trust by using technology with CATs or data analytics. CAT refers to computer assisted audit techniques or tools. But let's go to the next aspect. I'll quickly cover this so that we can go to the practical aspects. What is the scope and application of data analytics? Before I go to this, I think if you look at in terms of scope and application, let me give you an interesting story. Once a famous professor was solving a complex problem on the board. It involved multiple steps. He completed the steps, explaining each of the steps, and then he looked back at the students, and the students signaled to him to move to the side. He was surprised why they asked him to move to the side. They said then he moved to the side, and the students took up their mobile and took a photo of the solution which was written on the board. The professor spent half an hour solving the problem step by step. And what did the student do? He took a photo snapshot of that particular solution, and he think that you understood the problem solving. Now you cannot understand how to solve problems by taking a snapshot or a picture of the blackboard in which the problem has been solved. Problems are solved by actually working through the problem step by step. Similarly, in the case of data analytics also, we cannot apply data analytics by just relegating to the staff and provide them some tools and ask them to use it. We need to be extensively, personally involved in ensuring that it's correctly and completely applied. Now, if you look at the services provided by CA firms, now it could be process outsourcing, where we are actually performing, let's say, tax compliance services, filing services, GST filing, income tax filing, or various types of filing services. There's nothing but process outsourcing. We have regulatory compliances, audit assurance, consulting and advisory, litigation and assessment. Now, if you look at the specific areas, where do you think data analytics could be most extensively used? Now, let's come from the back. Litigation assessment, I think it has got limited usage. Consulting advisory also has got limited usage. You can use it for some analysis. But in the case of the first three, process outsourcing, regulatory compliance, audit and assurance, this can definitely be used. In the case of regulatory compliance also, it can be applied on the data, and then you can verify and validate whether the compliance has been done and what are the exceptions and why the exceptions occurred. Now, if you look at the areas of work, broadly, you can classify this in terms of office management. It could be pertaining to the client, works, or staff. You've got the data pertaining to this. You've got the accounting or the finance, MIS or the CFO. And then third category is the compliance, where you're doing the consulting or filing. Or the fourth one is assurance, where you're doing statutory or management reviews. Now, all the specific areas you find that you can use data analytics software, or there are technology solutions for each of these areas. But data analytics could be used extensively in the case of assurance. It can also be used in the case of compliance. In the case of compliance, it could be used mostly for the purpose of verifying the compliances. In the case of consulting or filing, it may not be extensively used. But in the case of filing, maybe you can use it to verify whether the filing has been done on time. In the case of accounting or finance, you can use it for generating MIS. In the case of office management, you can use it for identifying the productivity of the employees. You can also look at what are the productivity of the clients, who are the high paying clients, who are the clients who pay on time. Like that, you can do various analysis. Let's look at the software solutions which are available for each of these areas. There are software solutions for each of these areas. Now you need to look at what is the specific software. Like I said earlier, depending on the specific area of application, choose the right type of software and use it. One critical factor we need to take into consideration is that investment in information technology has to be considered as an investment and not an expenditure. You should evaluate it not in terms of how much you're going to pay, but in terms of how much value you can derive from it. Quite often you find whenever you give a demo of any particular software or the software CA sees any software, he looks at the cost, and based on the cost, he'll take a decision whether it's affordable or not affordable. It's not a question of affordable or not affordable. It's a question of what is the value you can derive from its investment. So if you invest and if you're able to properly deploy the technology, you should be able to get the benefit much higher than what you've done. For example, let's say there is a CA who provides accounting services to clients. Now they're doing it manual entry. Now there are cases where software is available, where if you're going to doing manual entry, if you're directly able to do the automation through which you get the data in Excel directly pertaining to the bank statements or pertaining to the purchases or sales, you can directly convert this and import it in one go in a few hours and import it into Tally. So there may be thousands of transactions which might have taken weeks and months to complete manually, whereas through automation, you can do it in a few days. But the billing amount which you can do could be the same, or it could be much more higher, because you can provide much higher value to the client, and also the quality of the data would be much better. So the bottom line when you look at data analytics is there is a better way to provide assurance. You can ensure compliance and provide value addition. And you can be much more productive, effective, and timely when you know how to use technology and especially deploy data analytics in execution of the assignments. Now let's come to the opportunities in data analytics. Why do CAs need to use data analytics? They say the future will be exponentially digital. Now we have seen data, most of the data is available to you in a digital format. For example, if you look at the type of transactions which are happening, let's say in the case of your own firm, now just look at how many times you're writing the checks earlier and how many times you're writing the checks now. Most of the transactions happen through digital banking now. Similar from your clients also, you are receiving the transactions through digitally. So it means that most of the transactions are getting digital. Similarly, when you make the purchases, just look at how many times you're making physical purchases and how many times you're making digital purchases. So the future will be much more digital. This is no doubt. There is no doubt in this. Chartered accountants, being the creative problem solvers, business solution providers, have to know how to future-proof their career, or there will be other consultants who will take your place and be able to provide the services. Now, how do we do this? With the knowledge and skills of data analytics and the technology, so that we can enhance the value we provide using our core competences of accounting, finance, assurance, and compliances. Why should CAs learn and use data analytics? This gives you one more aspect. Data analytics will empower CAs to exploit their expertise so that you can create new possibilities of adding value. Analytics in finance, there's a new publication. I thought I'll give you a quick glance of this. This is by the Chartered Accountants of Australia and New Zealand. And this is what they say. The ability to relate the analytics to the business issue is fundamental. It's not just a technical, it's a business issue. So if you are providing value advisory services to clients, especially when the commerce is digital, you find CAs can use data analytics and provide new types of services to the clients. This some more aspect, they say, there has never been a greater need to invest in forward-looking analytics that help decision makers explore the potential range of options for the future and match these options to monitoring of current actions. Now, this also gives a warning. If as accountancy and finance professionals we are complacent, then we'll not recognize the opportunities that data analytics gives us. Now, let's go to the last point, which I wanted to highlight, which is about the case study, examples, and the demos. Now, you know data analytics. Now, we know most of us are using Excel. Excel is an excellent tool which can be used, but it has its own limitations. It was not designed for data analytics, although it provides most of the options. So you can definitely use Excel as required, but recognize that it has its own limitations because it is not designed for the purpose of audit. You also have general audit software. This could be in terms of add-in software with specific CAT functions. I'll show you some demos of some of the functions. You also have general audit software, which is specific data analytics software, which is an independent software with specific CAT functions or functions for doing data analytics. You also have application software, standard ad hoc reporting features and query features which are available. For example, if you're using Tally, Tally itself has got various reporting features, various query features, various exception reports through which you can do the analysis as required. You also have specialized audit software. I'll give you an example of this also as we go on, which can extract reports, ready-made reports for analysis for the auditors. Now, if you look at the top 20 DA functions, so the data analytics, there may be 300 plus data analytics functions. What is important is we should know, based on the Pareto principle, the 80-20 rule, which are the top 20 functions. And if you look at each of these functions, now each of these functions, maybe you're already familiar, and probably if you're using data analytics, some of this could also be available in Excel. But the beauty of data analytics is you can do it on much larger volume of data, and they can be much more effective and much more easier and simpler to learn and apply. So each of these functions, I can guarantee you, you can learn in 3 to 5 minutes. I'll show you the demo shortly. Let's look at the case studies and demo of eCAAT, which is the data analytics software. Okay, now let me come here. What I'd like to do is let's go back to Excel. I have not forgotten the sequel to the Gita lesson. I'll come back to that in the end, the last 5 minutes. Okay, now let's look at this software. Now, if you see here, this is the list of all the functions which are available. Now, if you see here, this type. Now, this is the functions, the news panels, and let's say if I look at the panels, these are the panels available. You got the curate panel. It also gives a brief explanation of what you can do: curate, profile, analyze, investigate, document, utilities, and tools. These are the type of panels in each of the panels. For example, if I have to click here, let's say we bring it here. Now, this is the example of the software. Now, let's say I click here. Now, this is what we have got. Okay, now if you see curate, you got the functions here. Similarly, you got profile, you got analyze, investigate, like that you got the panels. Similarly, you got the menus. Now, if you look at the menus, under each of the panels, you got menus. For example, let's say you say curate. Now, if you see in curate, you got the remove menu. In remove, you got a set of functions which are readily available. Okay. Similarly, you've also got the functions. If I click on the functions here, now if you see, there are more than 396. There are 396 functions exactly in each of these functions. Okay, which means even if you spend 2 minutes on each of these functions, it will take about, you can learn the software about 12 to 13 hours, and you can master data analytics. Okay, this is just an example of eCAAT, the list of functions which are available. I'll give you specific examples. Before that, I want to show you specific case studies from the practical perspective. When you want to use, how do I use it? What are the practical case studies? Let's go to the case studies. Okay, let's come to the presentation. Okay, this is what I want to show you. Let me move this guy here. Okay, now amplify the value of data in Excel. eCAAT Suite, this is the analytics or BI software. Now, why use eCAAT? This gives you the reason. This is a simple software which is an add-in to MS Excel. It is easy to use and simple to learn. It is a look and feel of MS Excel, but with the power of the database. And it has very powerful data analytics and BI and fraud investigation with more than 350 functions. And you can perform complex analytics in a few clicks. Not only that, it does auto documentation. So in summary, it is called as data analytics simplified. So this gives you some of the specific areas where you can use. Now this gives you the look and feel of the software. So they just an add into Excel, which means just like you have Excel, this will be in a tab. When you click on this tab, all the functions are available. Now this gives you a comparison between the two types of versions of Excel, eCAAT. Now if you see here, I just want you to highlight the specific areas. For example, you got panel wise, you can perform curate functions, you can profile, you can analyze the sampling, you can investigate. Anything you do in audit, you find most of these functions would already be available in the data analytics software. Similarly, if you look at in terms of utility, you got Excel. Now you want to enhance the power of Excel and save time. There are functions which are available. You want to specifically perform data analytics or fraud investigation, your functions. You want to perform business intelligence or MIS, you got functions for that. And similarly, there are documentation features. So this is a software which has been developed over a period of more than 25 years. Now, who can use? Now, this gives you a quick summary of who are the users. So if you see, this gives you a snapshot of what you can do. It enhances the power of Excel, and you can perform dynamic data analytics and BI in MS Excel. So it's a time saver. You can perform BI and MIS on the fly using data analytics. Now, I've already shown you a brief overview of the eCAAT functions. Now, let me go to specific case studies. Now, if you look at properly, if you look at the documentation and you have to follow the standard audit methodology, let's say I'm auditing accounts payable using data analytics, how would I do step by step? Okay, now first, I set up the control objectives based on the policy of the company, and the control objectives which are set are pertaining to specific areas, let's say maintenance of records, whether the company maintains proper records of all the transaction accounts payable, and the details are reconciled with internal and external confirmation as required on a timely basis. Similarly, I look at the policies and procedures, where the company has got policy and procedures, what are the policies, what are the areas where the policies are applicable, for example, pertaining to purchases, pertaining to receipt of goods, selection of authorized vendors. In each of this, I select the data, I collect the policy, and I use data analytics to perform. And I also look at the internal policy and the regulatory compliances. Okay, this is the first step. Then I can actually make a detailed list of the control objectives, where I look at, let's say, if it's purchase orders. Okay, then I'll decide what are the types of tests or the risks which I want to evaluate. Purchase orders are placed only for approved acquisitions. Purchase orders are accurately entered. All purchase orders are input and processed. Like that, I'll make a list. And using the data analytics, I can actually validate and verify 100% of the transactions for each of these areas. Now, let's say if I'm looking at sample areas for review and accounts payable, I have made a list here. For example, duplicate payments, duplicate invoices using vendor's numeric invoice values, vendor payments made over a weekend. Like that, I can make a list of specific areas which I want to review in accounts payable. For example, if I'm looking at duplicate payments, I'll establish the context. Now, what is that I'm looking at? High volume of payment in all areas, process the finance function, everyday payment or payment cycle. So how is it being monitored? And what is the risk in this particular area? What is the procedure I perform? And what is the analytic logic which I apply? Similarly, if you look at duplicate invoices, next I have this duplicate invoice from the same vendor, and then I have vendor payments made over a weekend. I'll show you practical demos of some of these cases. Okay, invoices greater than a threshold. For example, the company said will not buy more than 1 lakh rupees in a single invoice. Okay, has this policy been overridden by reducing the purchase value to 95,000 rupees or 98,000? Okay, purchase order after the invoice date, which means the goods have been received, the invoice has been received, thereafter you're issuing a purchase order. Okay, vendor paid by both the purchase order and as a sundry expense, which means I've actually issued a purchase order. Based on that, I processed, and also one more invoice received and I accounted as a sundry expense. Invoice is greater than the approved purchase orders. I place a purchase order, let's say for 1,50,000, where I received the goods of 2,50,000 and I made payment for this 2,50,000 rupees. Manual release invoices. So it means there are three-way match for this I can perform. Area outlier invoices, which means invoices which are beyond the average. I can perform this outlier in a very simple way. I'll show you in a few minutes. Now, to summarize all this, how do I use this in data analytics? Now, I've given specific examples. These details are also available on the website. I'll give you a reference of that. You can verify and use that as required. For example, let's say if you look at accounts payable, what are the CAAT queries which can be performed? CAAT refers to, as I said, computer-assisted audit techniques. Calculate the cash requirement, bank, period, product, vendor, etc. Calculate days in accounts payable. Check vendor address against the mail address. Compare supplier names, addresses with the employers. Like that, you got various things you want to check. You can verify this very easily. So what can you do with the data analytics? Especially with the data analytics software, you can provide better assurance compliance, and you can also do BIR fraud investigation. So what is the ultimate benefit of using data analytics? Now, if you see here, data, they said, is the new oil, but to use this new oil, you need to have the engine, and analytics is the engine which actually powers it. Now let's take this down to check what are we saying here. eCAAT can be the Google Map for your analytics journey. Okay, let me come to the practical aspects now. eCAAT empowers you the engine of data analytics. This is about the eCAAT software. Now what I'll do is, now let me just quickly show you a demo of some of the functions so that you can get an idea. We are not talking about theory, we're talking about practical. Okay, now I'm going to come to the list of the eCAAT functions. This is the list of eCAAT functions. Okay, now if you look at specific areas, now for example, let's say I want to look at profile. If you look at profile, now this gives me a list of all the functions which are available, and all these functions are easily explained. For example, when you say stratify, what does stratify mean? Stratify means you actually group numeric data into different strata based on the intervals. Now you can also stratify based on the date, which means you group the data based on the specific period. You can also do based on the character or the key field. You can also perform aging, stratify aging. You can summarize quick. Like that, there are various functions. Now what I'll do is, let me pick up some sample data and show you some of the functions. Let's say I click on this eCAAT functions. Now this is already in eCAAT. What I'll do is, let's say I pick up this function. I'll just show you some simple functions. Let's say I take up data. You got to stratify. For that, I need to first have the data. So what we'll do is, let's say I have the sample data available here. I click on this. I open the sample data. The sample data has all the data which is required for analysis. Now it also has got an index sheet. Index sheet, which means you can actually go to the specific sheet as required. Now I've got the sales transactions. Now if you see here, this is what I got. I got the invoice date, invoice number, name of the dealer. This is what we, all the data which is available. Okay, now what I would like to do here is, based on this, I want to do analysis. Let's decide where this guy is going to sit here. Okay, now what I would like to do is, let's understand the data dictionary. Okay, and I got the sale date, I got the invoice, name of the dealer. Based on this itself, I can formulate, let's say this is all the pertaining to the sales, and I'm verifying this is pertaining to the sales which have been made, and it gives me all the products and the user who have done. Now, based on this, I can do analysis. Let's say I pick up a simple analysis. We can perform, let's say, probably 10 to 15 types of tests based on this. Now, I'll just give you some example. Let's say I take this data. Let's say I pick up the classify, which is the simplest function like pivot table. Now here, it gives me option. I want to find out what are the sales made as per each of the dealers. Okay, I wrongly take the user ID. Okay, and I want the total sales amount. Okay, which means I want to know what is the sale which is made as per the dealer. I want to pick up which is, and then I want to sort it as per the top this one. Now, if you see here, there will be 6,000 plus transactions. Now it processes this data. Now I've got this result here. If you see the result here, I got the total. Now the first thing it tells me is there are two cases of dealers which are blanks, and now I want to see the details. I just double click. It shows me which are the transactions where the name of the dealer itself is missing. Okay. So now I want to sort it based on the sum of the sales amount. I can just do a single click. Based on this, I know, okay, what is the sales as per each of the dealers. Now I want to see based on the count. Okay, which are the transactions which happened minimum. Now these are the transactions which are happened minimum. So which means now I can also verify why this transaction, this vendor dealer has bought only once. Is it continued or it discontinued? What has happened? I want to find out based on the volume, who's the dealer who got the maximum sales. I can also find this. Okay, I want to extract this in Excel. I just click on Excel, I can take this. Now, once I got this data, now I just want to show you. Now, same thing, I just want to use the same thing. Let's say, same function, classify. I want to do it based on okay, now I want to based on the region. I want to get region wise. Now in region wise, I want to have the units sold. Okay, not only that, I want to group this based on the dealer. Okay, this is where I said you can generate various types of MIS. I can do analysis. Now in this case, what I'll be able to get is, I'll be able to get the sales region wise. Inside the region, it gives me the details of the dealer also. Now if you see here, in a few seconds, I've got the result. Now if you see here, central region, this is the dealer for the number of transactions. Now I would just want to get it based on the dealer wise. I just click on this. Now if you see here, this particular dealer, now I'm surprised why this dealer is there in 4 regions, which means he's got branches in each of those regions. Now this dealer, how many regions he has bought, what is the total amount he has bought. So I can get the details of each of the regions and the sales per each of the dealers. This is as per the units. I can also get the value based on this. Okay, so now let's say in this case, I also have got the sales and I've got the color. Based on this, I can do various steps of analysis required. I want to find out, let's say the user ID, what are the sales which has been made by different types of users. Now to avoid this problem, what I'll do is I think I close the other Excel sheets. So that the processing will be faster. Okay, let me close this also. Okay, now I've got a single worksheet. Now let me just quickly finish this because I want to show you at least 10 to 15 functions. I'm just showing you one function. Now I've got this. What I want to do is I want to find out based on the user ID. Okay, and then I want, let's say, this sales amount. This just see, you have to just select and you have to click. Now it tells me here some interesting observation. You find there are 10 user transactions where the user ID itself is missing. The total value of the transaction is 14,29,500. Now this becomes immediately an audit observation. Make a note of this and check up how were the transactions entered without the user ID being captured. Was it entered directly through the database? Or what's happened? I need to do a detailed investigation because the value of the transactions is quite high. Next, I want to sort it based on the user ID and check how many users have entered how many transactions. So if I just took based on the sales value, now I get these values. Similarly, if I do based on the user ID, now I found this, there is admin who has entered 12 transactions. Now this is also another area where I want to check who is this admin and how this person has entered 12 transactions. Similarly, you got AA and NJ who have got only 61 and 74 transactions. Okay, whereas if you look at the number of transactions, now here you got KF who has got 1,018 transactions. So does it mean that they are more efficient or what is the reason? So I can do a detailed analysis as to what is the reason each of the entered has entered this number of transactions. Now let's say I want to check the authorization policy. Now if I come to the index sheet, now if you see here, I got the sales authorization limit, which means for each of the users, I got the authorization limit. What I would like to do now is I would want to match, let's say you got the sales items. Okay, now I got the sales, which is here. Okay, I got the limit. Now, if you see here for each of the user IDs, I want to check whether the transactions have been entered manually. How do I enter that? If I have to do through Excel, there'll be a lot of circuits to do this to come to the result. Here I'll do in a very, very simple way. So what I can do here is, now this gives you all the functions which are there. You can append files with match columns, validate like this. Okay, now you got this templates. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do something called an authentication check. Now, if you see in authentication check, I've selected the sales transaction file. I'm going to go to the secondary file, which is the authorization, sales authorization limit. I give yes, it gives me that sales authorization limit. Okay. Now here, I got the user ID, and then I say user ID. It also tells me the steps. You see here, step 3, step 4, and then I say step is equals, which means I want to find out which are the transactions where the user ID and user ID equals. Okay, and then I want to find out sales amount is, we picked up the authorization limit is greater than the authorized limit, which means at one shot I'm able to do a complete 100% audit, pick up for all the authorized users whether the transactions are done beyond the authorized limit. Now there may be, let's say, 15 users, and based on the 15 users, they might have done about 6,000 transactions, and I'm able to find out there are 89 transactions where the sales, where the amount is beyond the limit. Okay, which means I'm able to do 100% authorization check. Now, if you see this particular limit here, in this case, I've got this user. Now, if you see here, the sales amount is 85,000, his limit is 80,000. Okay, now I got this amount, his sales is 1,52,000, which means there is a small variation in the limit. Okay, I can also check up based on, for example, I want to find out for specific user ID. Now I just go to user ID and I say I want to find out for particular user ID SB. I'll be able to get all the user IDs. This one. Okay. Similarly, I want to pick up, let's say, another user SF. I can pick up all the transactions pertaining to SF. So it means I'm doing 100% audit of the transactions in a very simple way. Now let me come back here. Let me show you a few more functions. Let's come back and check. Now here I got, let's say, the procurement policy. I got this procurement policy. Okay, now if you see the procurement policy, I got the purchase order number, vendor code, like that. I got the names. Okay, so what I'd like to do in this case is the purchase, I want to stratify this based on a particular values, based on the amount. Okay, now here if I go to data, I got something called stratify, and then I say numeric. Now here what I'd like to do is stratify based on the amount, correct? Now it tells me what is the minimum value and maximum value, and what's the average increment value. I say fill. Okay, it tells me this is the strata which has been created. I say okay. Now it groups all these transactions based on this particular limits, and it tells me what is the number of transactions. It looks like here, if you see, 92% transactions are between 312 to 9,218. And if you look at percentage, 64% are the transactions. Okay, 22%, like that, it gives me the complete. Now here I can find out the exceptions. Now if you see here, there are transactions between 94,998 to 95,000. There's one transactions. Okay, now I've got another case. Now all these cases where the transactions are beyond the limit, I can find out which is specific order. Now let's say this particular strata, now I got a maximum amount here. Instead of this, I want to break this category. Now I come back here and let's say I do stratify numeric again. Now here I pick up this one. Now instead of 9,005, this one, what I'll do is I'll say I want based on 5,000. Okay. Now it's already got the strata. So just see this, very, very simple. So you have to just know how to use this function. I can also go a free interval. Now in this case, it tells me between -312 to 4,687, what are the number of transactions? So I'm able to get a complete grouping of the transactions for each of these areas. Okay, and I can find out the exceptions easily. Now, if I want details of these exceptions, I can also extract all these details. Okay, now if you see here, I can get all these details in one go. This just I showed you two simple functions. Let me pick up one more function here. Now, let's say I've got this analysis. Now I want to pick up, let's say, I want to do ABC analysis. Okay, ABC analysis based on the value. Who are the vendors from whom I have purchased, let's say 60%, like that. So select the analysis field. I'm going to select the vendor name. Or let's say I'm interested in based on the vendor name. Okay, select the primary field, which means based on the amount. Okay, and I say I want 60, 30, 10. So for each of the vendors, I can get from who are the vendors from whom I bought 60%, who are the vendors from whom I bought 30%, who are the vendors from whom I bought 10%. See, now at one glance, I'm able to get the complete list of all the purchases made based on this. Okay, I want to do the Pareto principle, which is 80-20. I can also do that. Okay, let's say one more interesting thing here. I want to confirm the purchase policy. I want to see which are the cases where the purchases have been made within the limit, which are the items which there are exceptional purchases. Now, what I do is I use the relative size factor. So in this case, I pick up the material code, okay, and then the unit price, which means for each of the material code, I have the unit price, and then I say, okay. Now it will be able to tell me for each of the material, the code, it does the grouping and tells me which is the first highest price, which is the second highest price, and then I can know what is the difference. For example, if you see this item, the highest price I bought 5124, and the lowest price second price is 151.24, and what are the variance? This item 700, whereas actual generally second highest is 70. Now I want to see the details. I double click on this and I get the details. So in this case, I know most of the times I bought at 31. Now these three are exceptional purchases. So it means I'm able to find out the exceptions and irregularities in one go in just a few clicks. And that is the power of analytics. Now this data may be 5,000, maybe 50,000. I can perform analytics like this. Okay, now I just showed you about 5 or 6 functions. Like that, there are about 400 plus functions for each of these areas. Now let me come back to my presentation. So I wanted to cover 2-3 software. Let me come back here. Now if you go to the next one, which is called as T-CAAT. Now this is pertaining to data analytics, where you get the data in Excel. Now this I'm going to show you one more case where I've got the data in Tally. I want to do analysis based on this particular Tally data. Okay. Now if you see here quickly. Now what can you do? I can export the masters, vouchers, and reports from Tally to Excel in a few clicks. So you can amplify the value of assurance from Tally with automated solutions. Or this is what you can do. You can import the data of masters transaction report from Tally to MS Excel in a few clicks in a structured format, and you can perform the type of tests which are required. Now if you see, it dynamically interacts with the Tally to get the masters. So this gives you the salient features of the software. Now, how do you do this? Software is very simple. Open Tally, select the company, identify specific master transactions, open MS Excel, and click on the T-CAAT tab. I'll show you in a little while. Brief overview of the T-CAAT functions. Now let's come to the use cases. Now this gives you an overview of the use case. You can use it for standardizing the audit. You can export all the masters, the configuration, and you can do profiling to identify which are the specific areas you want to audit. This helps in saving time and also ensures standard documentation. This is a use case 2. You can improve the quality of the assurance services by having a standard process in place. How is it done? You can decide to export all the transactions for all the selected period and do the analysis. You can also export all the sales register, purchase registers in the report, and you can prepare a detailed checklist where you can say what are the specific areas you want to audit. This is another test case where you can use the inbuilt security and control features of Tally. So there you just export most of the cases. In the case of T-CAAT, what it provides you is you can export the masters and the transactions in a structured fashion in Excel and do the analysis. In addition to that, it also has got some standard audit features. All the data, what will be the module, you can export from here. Now let me close this. Now, before I go further, I just want to give you a quick overview. What are the functions which are available in this software? If you look at here, this is what is available here. Now this is what is available in T-CAAT. Now if you click on T-CAAT, now this is also an add-in software. Okay, now if you see here, what are the features? Open Tally, company info, run in the disable mode, Excel log, like that. It gives you various things. Okay, now you got, let's say, let me pick up quickly. Now I got Open Tally. Now this is the tally for one company for period 12 and 13. I just extract you some sample report to give you an idea. For example, let's say I want master info. Now this gives you the master info. Now you see all this list of masters, whether it's pertaining to inventory, pertaining to this cost center, all these things. All this, let's say there are about 30 types of reports. I'm just picking one example. I can extract this. This goes through a SQL query directly through Tally, get that report, converts it into Excel, and provides you the report in Excel. And then you can do the analysis as required. So you find your audit process and standard. See how many seconds did it take? I got about 30 types of reports, and all these reports are available in a few clicks. Okay, it's exported all this master data. Now, if you see here, category-wise analysis of the data, group summary, okay, cost category. Like that, I got various types of reports. What is it? All these are reports pertaining to, let's say I want expense ledger. I get the complete expense ledgers. Okay, what is the date, who's created it, what is the parent, all these things I can get in one shot. And I can spend more time on analysis rather than spending on detailed verification. Now, let me pick up one more example before I go to another example. This one, I just click on T-CAAT. You just keep Tally open for this. I want to pick up the daybook transactions. Now I got the daybook transactions. Now I've got this data. Now here I have to pick up this. Let me see what the period for which the data is available. Okay, I change it to, okay, this pertaining to here. I come back again to daybook. Now this is where I'm looking at the transactions. See, it gives me 12 and 13. I just say okay. Now it extracts all the daybook transaction, which means all the transactions happened during the year, and gives to me in Excel. And I can do any type of analysis once I got the data in Excel in a structured manner. Okay, now if you see here, all these transactions, what are transactions available pertaining to various types of masters, various types of transactions happen during the year, I can get in one go. Okay, once I got the data, I can use Excel itself, the pivot table, I can do analysis. I can do any type of analysis as required. Like that, you got various types of, similarly, I want, let's say, trial balance. I just say, I want trial balance, ledger with groups. Now I just say, yes. Now I see I get a trial balance with the ledger and this one, which is not possible even in Tally. Now I see get the name, parent, primary group, opening debit, opening credit, everything get in one shot. Okay, now you also have got the audit features where you can generate various types of features. For example, I say ledger scrutiny. Now it gives me various types of reports. Now you see these are the various types of reports available. I can extract this report. I just say, okay, I can extract that report and do analysis, which means extracting information from Tally becomes very easy. I spend more time on analysis. Okay. Now, not only this, I also have another type of software. Let's say, let me show you some report. Let's say there is a company called Tally on Wheels, which has generated, I told you, standard of software. They got standard software through which you can. Now they have got, now let's come to the documents for demo. Okay, now Tally on Wheels. Now they got various types of reports. I'm just going to pick up some report. Now what happens is when you go to the website Tally on Wheels, and now you can also create a free account. You just run that particular report. You'll be able to generate in a few minutes about 60 types of reports, which means generally when an auditor does the analysis, what are the type of reports you're looking for? Let's say you're looking for cash payment more than 10,000, cash receipts more than 10,000, cash ledger of receipt nature, but payment is made through entry. Like that, you can pick up customers without GST number. There are about 60 types of reports in different categories, and you can generate this in one go. Not only that, it also gives you, when you click on the view, it shows me that particular report, the specific transactions which are there. In Tally, when you extract the details, when you say minus, it means debit. Okay, highest and lowest value transaction. All the transactions which happened, I'll be able to know what is the highest value of the transactions, what is the lowest value of the transaction. For example, let's say rent is a fixed amount, so it cannot vary. So if I can find out if there is a variance. Similarly, let's say conveyance. Now, one case they paid, let's say 20,000 rupees, and generally it's 2,000 rupees. Then I know that 20,000 rupees, maybe that's an expenditure. They have just booked it in a conveyance. I can also find, so using software, I can pick up all the exception reports in one go. So I can spend more time on analysis rather than detailed verification, routine monotonous verification. Similarly, there's one more report here. Let's say this pertaining to, let's say, product-wise analysis. Okay, for each of the products, month-wise, what are the sales? Party-wise analysis or expenditure-wise analysis. I'll be able to get the details for each of the type of expenditure month-wise. Okay, depreciation, how I charged. All these things I can get in one go. Now I'll show you one more last interesting report from the software. Now let me pick up the schedule 3. Now I got this trial balance. From the trial balance, it will prepare the schedule 3, based on which you can do the formatting. For example, you set the company info. Okay, then you have the standard SAP. Then you have the balance sheet, which is automatically prepared and given to you. This is given for the current year and the last year. Okay, in case this one, see now I got this data. I got the balance sheet. I got the profit and loss account. All this is formatted and prepared ready in a few seconds. And this is what is the power of analytics. You have solutions which are available. What is important is you need to explore them. Okay, now I have got another 4 minutes. Let me just give you, add one thing which I wanted to show you. Now coming back to the sequel of the story. Now before I open the file, let me give you one analogy. There is a famous professor who used to give lectures in a college. So one day he was sick. So what he did was, he did the recording in his home and set the recorded tape recorder to the with his assistant and told him to play this in the class and told us to tell the student that because he's not well, he is not able to come to the class. So he did this for the one day, and the second day also he was not feeling well, so he recorded and repeated this. So after the class was over, his staff assistant brought back the tape recorder. So third day he did the same thing, but he wanted to see what's happening in the class. So he sent the tape recorder and went to see how the students are behaving when only the recorded lectures are being played. So he went to the class, and to his amazement, he found there is not a single student in the class. Instead of this, he found there are tape recorders which are there put by each of the students. So the tape recorder is being played by the professor, was being recorded by the tape recorder of the student. Now in this case, what are the students trying to do? They're quite intelligent. They're trying to learn directly rather than wasting time hearing from a recorded lesson. Now, in this case, what's happening? The machine is learning from the machine. But do you think machine learning is going to be useful for humans? So in the case of technology also, it's important that human beings have to get involved. So if you want to improve the quality of services, you want to deliver value from services, it's important that you should remember that you're not paid for the amount of time the client pays you for the value of the time delivered. Now we have come nearly to 88 minutes of this webinar. I just wanted to give you a sequel to the story. In this particular story, you remember we talked about 3 types of listeners. Now you see, this is where I also applied personally data analytics on the Gita. So it means I got all the verses of the Gita, and I also got who said what, who said. For example, if you see, who are the speakers in the Gita? Now you got Dhritarashtra, he spoke only once. Okay, what does he want to know? He wants to know what is happening in the battlefield. What are the sons doing? Now, if you look at the Sanjaya, Sanjaya spoke many times. Sanjaya is the one who was transmitting the message. Okay, now he spoke many times. Okay, now if you come to the Krishna and Arjuna, now there is a lot of interaction. You'll be able to say, and Duryodhana spoke 9 times, and most of the time he was only praising his army as to how great his army was. Now let's come to the analogy. I was talking about the different types of listeners. Now I told you about Sanjay, who's a passive listener. Dhritarashtra, who's a native listener, he is not bothered about listening. And then you have Arjuna, who's an active listener. Now I want to come to the this one. I was interested in knowing what happens at the end of the story. How does each of this person behave at the end of this? Okay, now if you come to the end, okay, now what does Sanjay do after listening to this? Now Sanjay says, I heard this wonderful dialogue. By the grace of Guru, I have done all these things. He says, by repeated remembrance, I recollect again and again. Wherever Krishna is, there is a lot of yoga, all these things. He says, I rejoice over again and again. So it means with this knowledge, what is he doing? He is not interested in application. He is only interested in the value of that knowledge and say, yes, yes, the discourse of Gita is very good. Krishna is great, all those things. But he didn't apply. Whereas if you look at Krishna, what did he do? Krishna said at the end of the Bhagavad Gita, by your grace, my delusion is destroyed. I have gained knowledge. My confusion with regard to the body and Atman is dispelled, and I shall obey your command. And then he went into the battlefield. Now, similarly, in this presentation, we are given you knowledge of the data analytics. Now, it's important what type of action you take. You can be a Sanjaya, you can be a Dhritarashtra, or you can be a Arjuna. I'm not a Krishna, but I just gave you an analogy to give you an idea how you can use knowledge. The value of the knowledge is not in the knowing, but in the doing. So thank you very much. If you got any questions, probably I can take. Otherwise, thank you very much. I hope this presentation is useful to you. Let me close this.
We do have one question in the chat box, sir.
Okay.
Padmanabhan is this equivalent to importing the Tally database?
You cannot say Tally database, but all the data which is there in Tally, see, Tally has got two types of data. One data, where is that my share? How do I stop the share here? Pause share, okay. Yeah, let me see, you're able to see, okay. Yeah, okay. So now regarding this Tally data, what you can do is, see, Tally has got two types of data. One is the master data, other is the transaction data. In the case of the reports, various types of reports you got, you can export transactions data through various types of reports. Similarly, you can also export the master report. So it means you can get most of the data which is already stored by Tally, you can get it in Excel. Okay, anything else?
Also, one request is, can you share the BG Excel file? It's very interesting.
Okay, no. See, I spent a lot of time in doing this. This is for my own study and analysis. No, I'm not sure whether I can share that. I would be more than happy to share. But what I'll do is, see, learning has to happen on its own. So what I'll do is I'll share that Excel file without the analysis, because I want you to study and do the analysis on your own. Okay, I would have done analysis on my own, saying, okay, for example, for each sloka, if you look at, let's say, motivation or sin or this one, what is that? Anything which is there, I have put that in a particular category. I have tagged that. So it means if I want to search for a particular verse, I also know which other related verse. I can go the complete GAN of that particular topic. So I'll not share that. I'll remove the columns. I'll share the Gita itself to you in Excel file. You can send me a specific email, then I can share it with you. Let me just, I think okay, sorry, it's taken a little time. There is an ending part of the presentation. Let me just close that. It will take only 2 minutes. Okay, let me. Yeah, so I have 1 minute. Walk the reports. Okay, first I have to share my screen. Yeah. Share, yes. Share screen, yeah. Let me just share. Just give me 2 minutes. Let me close this because I'll bring it to logic close. Okay, let me come to my PowerPoint. So this is what, long back you remember we were talking about the 7 habits of highly effective people. And our friend was talking about, Stephen Covey was talking about sharpen the saw. He said, if I got 10 trees to cut and I got 30 minutes, I'm going to spend 20 minutes in sharpening the saw. Now the new age, it's not about sharpening the saw, it's you need to automate the saw. So data analytics and BI skills provide you the hindsight, insights, and the foresight. The big picture view is what is most important in data analytics, and you can chart your roadmap to add value. So this is my email ID if you'd like to interact with me. Yeah. Right, I'll stop my share. And if there are any other questions I can take, or we can close it.
Will the presentation be available to us? Request you to share your presentation, sir.
Yes, I'll share this presentation in a PDF format to ICI. I think they'll upload on the website and it'll be available to you. You can download it. The Excel file of the Gita, I think what you could do is you can just email to me personally. I'll share it with you. So this is just to give you that you can apply analytics in any area if you've got a passion for using technology. So thank you very much. I hope this presentation is useful, and whether useful to you or not, I don't know, but it was definitely useful to me. And I started with this premise that it is going to be a great learning experience. Definitely, it was a great learning experience for me, and I hope it was also a great learning experience for you. So namaste, and see you again in the future.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for making your time out, and you've given a very excellent presentation. Basically, of course, I think most of our participants are inclined towards your Gita presentation. Of course, thank you very much. Thank you for taking your time, sir.